A verse-by-verse study in the Book of Daniel, ESV, with Irv Risch, Chapter 10. What does Daniel chapter 10 mean? When Daniel was first captured, Daniel 1 verses 1 to 7, around the year 604 BC, he would have been a young man. What he sees in this passage occurs nearly 70 years later, around 536 BC. By this time, exiles are beginning to return to Jerusalem, Ezra 1 verses 2 to 3, and endure the hardships of rebuilding their city, Ezra 3 verse 8, 4:6. However, Daniel is still in Babylon, now under the control of the Persian Empire. Perhaps he was too old to relocate, or not allowed to leave. It's also possible he chose to remain to continue advocating for the people of Israel. Daniel sees another vision, this one involving some major conflict. Most interpreters believe this is what shakes Daniel enough to go into mourning. What he saw will be explained in greater detail in chapters 11 and 1. That vision is explained or elaborated on in chapters 11 and 12. Strictly speaking, the specific timing and reason of Daniel's fast is not provided. It could be the vision that caused his mourning, or it could be that Daniel was already in mourning when he saw the vision. Whatever the case, he was certainly deeply troubled, Daniel 10 verses 1 to 3. Apparently, Daniel's reaction to the vision was to seek God in prayer. While standing near the Tigris River, he is stunned by the sight of a celestial being. The creature looks like a man wearing linen and gold, with brilliantly shining limbs and face, and a voice like the roar of a crowd. Aspects of the description resemble those of Jesus in the book of Revelation, Revelation 1 verses 13 to 16, making some commentators think this is a pre-incarnate vision of Christ. However, the person Daniel sees appears to be the same entity who speaks of being delayed by another spiritual power, Daniel 10 verse 13. For this reason, it seems best to think of this being as an angel of high order. It is clearly not Michael, Daniel 10 verses 13 and 21. This is most likely the angel Gabriel, who often delivers messages from the Lord, Daniel 8 verses 15 to 16, 9 verses 21 to 22, Luke 1 verse 26. Only Daniel sees this, the others with him merely sense the supernatural presence and run away. The encounter is so vivid and powerful that Daniel appears to pass out. Daniel 10 verses 4 to 9. Someone or something touches Daniel, restoring him enough to stand back up. Some commentators believe an entirely separate angel touches Daniel and begins to speak to him, but this seems unnatural to the text. More likely is that this is the same being he first saw. The angel reassures Daniel that he's come to answer prayers and explain Daniel's vision of the future. The delay was caused by a conflict with some other being, called the Prince of the Kingdom of Persia. This is apparently a demon of some kind, exerting influence over that nation. The angel was unable to break free until aided by the archangel Michael, Jude 1 verse 9, Revelation 12 verse 7. This information again overwhelms Daniel, who stands with his face down in shock, Daniel 10 verses 10 to 17. Once again, Daniel is given strength and encouragement by the touch of his visitor. The angel calls Daniel, greatly loved, Daniel 9 verse 23, and notes that his visit is meant to explain what Daniel has seen. This interpretation is absolute truth, taken from the Book of Truth. This does not mean a paper and ink object, but instead represents the perfection and accuracy of God's knowledge, Psalm 56 verse 8, 139 verse 16, 2 Samuel 7 verse 28, Numbers 23:19. The angel prepares Daniel to withstand the intense information which is to come, Daniel 10 verses 18 to 21. Chapter context: the event recorded here occurred in the third year of the reign of Cyrus, king of Persia, around 536 BC. The chapter supplies background to the prophecies detailed in chapters 11 and 12. Daniel received a heavenly visitor, sent to make Daniel understand what Israel will experience in the latter days. Along with chapter 12, this covers the final prophetic vision of Daniel's book. Verse by verse. Verse 1. In the 3rd year of Cyrus king of Persia a word was revealed to Daniel, who was named Belteshazzar. And the word was true, and it was a great conflict. And he understood the word and had understanding of the vision. Because of the timeline Daniel offers, readers can align these events in the flow of history. The 3rd year of Cyrus' reign would be around 536 BC. 2 years earlier, Cyrus had allowed Jewish captives, and their descendants, to begin rebuilding Jerusalem and the Temple, Ezra 1 verses 2-3. Daniel was captured at a young age and assimilated into Babylonian culture, Daniel 1 verses 1-7. Part of that included being given a new name, Belteshazzar, or Belteshazzar. This probably referred to the deity Bel, while Daniel's birth name, Daniel, means, God is my judge. At the time of this vision, Daniel would have been some 70 years older. Other details about his life are not offered. We're not sure if Daniel was too old to return to Israel, or if he was still in an important position, or if he remained in Babylon for some other reason. Perhaps Daniel chose to remain where he was to influence kings such as Cyrus on his people's behalf, Daniel 1 verses 19-21, 5 verses 11-12, 6:3. The word is a message which Daniel is given. As a divine communication, it was sure to be perfect and true. The exact nature of that vision is not stated, nor are many details given. The fact that Daniel understood it, and possibly went into mourning because of it, Daniel 10 verse 2, suggests that it was about a war to come on the people of Israel, Daniel 10 verse 14. His vision and grief also align with struggles experienced by the Jewish people as they began their rebuilding efforts, Ezra 3 verse 8, 4:4-6. Context summary Daniel 10 verses 1-9 sets the date of Daniel's final vision as the 3rd year of the reign of Cyrus of Persia. Daniel sees a vision of a tremendous war or battle. Seemingly in response to that vision, Daniel mourns for weeks, until he is confronted by a celestial being. Daniel appears to faint, at first, but will be quickly roused, Daniel 10 verses 10-11, so the being, or perhaps a different being, can explain what is happening. Verse 2. In those days I, Daniel, was mourning for 3 weeks. Daniel has been given another vision, this time regarding some type of major war or battle, Daniel 10 verse 1. Few details are given about Daniel's mourning. Was the mourning prompted by the vision? Or was he mourning over something else when he had the vision? This taking place in the 3rd year of Cyrus' reign would place it around 536 BC. This is the same time during which Israel was allowed to return to Jerusalem and begin rebuilding, Ezra 1 verses 2-3. However, while there, the people faced great opposition, Ezra 3 verse 8, 4:4-6. Also, the number of Israelites who returned, Ezra 2 verse 64, seems small given how many Jews would have been living in Persia at that time. The mourning depicted here may be a reaction to Israel's lukewarm reaction to freedom. Or it might be Daniel's sorrow that his people would continue to be harassed and attacked. Daniel may have also been discouraged to realize that the full, permanent restoration of Israel to the Promised Land was not to occur in his lifetime, Isaiah 27 verses 12-13. It may be that he mourned because of what he saw in the future, combined with Israel's current condition. Verse 3. I ate no delicacies, no meat or wine entered my mouth, nor did I anoint myself at all, for the full 3 weeks. This explains further details of Daniel's 3 weeks of mourning, Daniel 10 verse 2, which seemed to be in response to a vision he had seen, Daniel 10 verse 1. He abstained from eating fine foods. Instead, he consumed only necessities. He also refrained from eating meat and drinking wine. Wine in the Bible is a symbol of joy and gladness of heart, but Daniel's heart was heavy with grief. Although he was free to enjoy special foods, meat, and wine, he refused that privilege to allow his heart to grieve. Furthermore, during those 3 weeks of mourning Daniel refused to refresh himself with anointing oils and salves. Assuming this mourning was related to Daniel's concern for his people, which seems likely given other descriptions of Daniel throughout the book, it is remarkable. Few believers today mourn, especially in such a dramatic way, when fellow believers face great conflict. Daniel was a man of self-discipline, Daniel 1 verse 8, 6:5. In the New Testament, the Apostle Paul reflects on the value of mastering one's impulses. He writes in 1 Corinthians 9 verse 27, "I discipline my body and keep it under control, lest after preaching to others I myself should be disqualified." Verse 4. On the 24th day of the first month, as I was standing on the bank of the great river, that is, the Tigris. Daniel was standing near the Tigris River on the 24th day of the first month. There, he experienced an addition to his final recorded vision, Daniel 10 verse 1. The month he specifies in this verse was April or the month of Abib, later called Nisan, Nehemiah 2 verse 1. Exodus 23 verse 15 places the Feast of Unleavened Bread in Abib. Likely, Daniel had kept the Passover on the 14th day of Abib and the Feast of Unleavened Bread that began the next day and continued to the 21st day. The Tigris and the Euphrates were separated by about 35 miles, or 56 kilometers, and not far from Babylon. Daniel may have been traveling on government business when he reached the Tigris River. He was not dreaming or just seeing the Tigris in a vision, as some expositors suppose. He was physically present at the site. Daniel was either already in mourning when he saw a vision or what he saw in his vision caused him to mourn, Daniel 10 verses 1-3. Here, he begins to learn more about the future from an impressive source, Daniel 5 verses 5-6. Verse 5. I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a man clothed in linen, with a belt of fine gold from Uphaz around his waist. This occurs during the reign of Cyrus, Daniel 10 verse 1. Daniel had been in mourning for 3 weeks, perhaps in response to a vision, Daniel 10 verses 2-3. While standing near the Tigris River, Daniel 10 verse 4, Daniel saw a figure with a celestial appearance. A description of the figure begins here, Daniel 10 verses 6-7. Some Bible teachers identify this person as Gabriel, the angel who often delivers God's messages, Daniel 8 verses 15-16, 9 verses 21-22, Luke 1 verse 26. This would make him the same being who touches Daniel, Daniel 10 verse 10, and speaks of battling with the prince of the kingdom of Persia, Daniel 10 verse 13. Given that Gabriel was known to Daniel and named elsewhere but not here, others believe this is a different angelic being of a high order. Still others believe this is a pre-incarnate Jesus Christ because some aspects of the description matched those given by John during his experience on Patmos, Revelation 1 verses 13-16. However, as God the Son, Jesus would not have needed the help of Michael to overcome anyone, Daniel 10 verse 13. A few commentators believe Daniel sees Jesus first, and then sees an angel, perhaps Gabriel, after he collapses, Daniel 10 verses 9-10. The figure's dress, white linen and a gold belt, would combine with his shining body, Daniel 10 verse 6, into an impressive sight. The reference to Uphaz may be the same place called Ophir in Isaiah 13 verse 12. Verse 6. His body was like beryl, his face like the appearance of lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, and the sound of his words like the sound of a multitude. Daniel describes the figure who appeared to him, Daniel 10 verses 4-5, as having a body like beryl. Names for minerals and gems are varied across cultures and languages, so it can be difficult to know precisely what is being depicted. The beryl noted here is called Tarshish in Hebrew, possibly in reference to the city of Tarshish, 1 Kings 10 verse 22, Psalm 48 verse 7, Jonah 1 verse 3. Actual beryl, as identified today, is usually blue, but it can come in many different colors. Interpreters suggest options such as yellow jasper or chrysolite, but the most likely option seems to be topaz. Daniel's emphasis here seems to be on something semi-transparent, brilliant, and striking. The figure's face is compared to lightning and his eyes to torches. Both refer to radiance, something casting light. His legs and arms also shone. The Hebrew descriptive term used here can mean burnished or polished. Since the emphasis seems to be on radiance, it's most likely that Daniel saw the figure's limbs shining with golden light like mirror-polished bronze. The entity's voice is also impressive. The original term is Hammon, which refers to the sound of a crowd, or a roar. Several interpreters believe this is the angel Gabriel, Daniel 8 verses 15 to 16, 9 verses 21 to 22, Luke 1 verse 26, though some suggest this is a pre-incarnate Jesus Christ, and separate from the person to whom Daniel speaks later in this encounter, Daniel 10 verses 9 to 14. Verse 7. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, for the men who were with me did not see the vision, but a great trembling fell upon them, and they fled to hide themselves. Daniel had been in mourning for 3 weeks, seemingly in response to a vision he had seen, Daniel 10 verses 1 to 3. He was confronted by a celestial being near the banks of the Tigris River, Daniel 10 verses 4 to 6. Apparently, the appearance of this figure created great fear in those who were with Daniel. And yet, only Daniel sees the entity. That other men reacted reinforces the idea that Daniel was awake for this revelation, that it was not a dream. Of course, Daniel was affected, as well. He will feel his strength drain away just from what he sees. When the being speaks, Daniel appears to faint, Daniel 10 verses 8 to 9. Fear is not an unusual response for humans confronted by angels, Daniel 8 verse 18, Matthew 28 verse 5, Luke 1 verses 12 to 13, 2 verses 9 to 10, Acts 10 verses 3 to 4. It was also the response of John when he saw a vision of Jesus in Revelation 1 verses 12 to 17. There are some parallels between this event and Paul's encounter with Jesus in the New Testament. Paul, then called Saul, was traveling when a light shone from heaven. Paul heard a voice, but only he seemed to have understood it. The other men with him perceived less than Paul did but were still unsettled, Acts 9 verses 1 to 9. Verse 8. So I was left alone and saw this great vision, and no strength was left in me. My radiant appearance was fearfully changed, and I retained no strength. The vision of the dazzling man, Daniel 10 verses 4 to 6, affected Daniel greatly. He didn't run away and hide as the other men did, Daniel 10 verse 7, despite being the only one who could see the celestial figure. It is often the case that seeing a real live angel inspires intense fear, Daniel 8 verse 18, Matthew 28 verse 5, Luke 1 verses 12 to 13, 2 verses 9 to 10, Acts 10 verses 3 to 4. This physical response demonstrates that Daniel was certainly fearful. At the time of this encounter, Daniel had been mourning for 3 weeks, perhaps in response to his vision of a great conflict, Daniel 10 verses 1 to 3. That included not eating luxurious foods or using cosmetic oils. Yet, according to this verse, Daniel's fear caused him to lose his radiant appearance. That likely refers to the natural color of his healthy face. In other words, Daniel went pale and his intense emotions were visible to others. Daniel's reaction here is the result of merely seeing this being, who is probably the angel Gabriel, Daniel 8 verses 15 to 16, 9 verses 21 to 22, Luke 1 verse 26, some think is a pre-incarnate Christ and others think is a different angelic being. When the being speaks with a roaring voice, Daniel seems to pass out cold, Daniel 10 verse 9, and needs to be revived, Daniel 10 verses 9 to 11. Verse 9. Then I heard the sound of his words, and as I heard the sound of his words, I fell on my face in deep sleep with my face to the ground. Despite their depiction in popular art, angels are not subtle, man-like creatures. They are incredibly powerful beings, 2 Kings 19 verse 35, it's expected that to see one in its natural state would inspire a sense of fear, Matthew 28 verse 5, Luke 1 verses 12 to 13, 2 verses 9 to 10, Acts 10 verses 3 to 4. When Daniel sees this figure, probably Gabriel, Daniel 8 verses 15 to 16, 9 verses 21 to 22, Luke 1 verse 26, his face drains of color and he begins to feel weak. When the being speaks in a roaring voice, however, Daniel seemed to pass out. To fall on one's face is a sign of either worship or humility. In this case, though, it appears Daniel was simply overwhelmed and fainted. Many biblical descriptions of heavenly encounters include similar reactions, Matthew 17 verses 5 to 6. If what Daniel sees is a pre-incarnate Christ, the fear is even more understandable, Revelation 1 verses 13 to 17. All other encounters will pale in comparison to the second coming of Christ, Revelation 19 verses 11 to 16, which reduces every enemy into dust, Malachi 4 verse 1. Verse 10. And behold, a hand touched me and set me trembling on my hands and knees. Upon seeing and hearing a radiant celestial being, Daniel 10 verses 5 to 6, Daniel felt weak and ultimately seems to have passed out, Daniel 10 verses 8 to 9. This is hardly unusual when mortal men are faced with immortal angels, Matthew 28 verse 5, Luke 1 verses 12 to 13, 2 verses 9 to 10, Acts 10 verses 3 to 4. The other men in the group didn't even see the being, they ran away simply from feeling its presence, Daniel 10 verse 7. In a gesture of reassurance, a hand, probably that of the same angel, lifts Daniel off his face and onto his hands and knees. He is still shaking. The use of the phrase, a hand rather than his hand, is one reason some commentators believe the first being Daniel saw was a pre-incarnate Jesus, while the being now interacting with Daniel is an angel, likely Gabriel. Almost all interpreters agree that the being who now speaks is not a pre-incarnate Jesus. In part, this is because the being has been sent, Daniel 10 verse 11, but mostly because he was delayed by some other entity until being helped by the angel Michael, Daniel 10 verse 13. Neither idea would seem to apply to God the Son, Jesus Christ. Gabriel is often shown delivering messages from God, Daniel 8 verses 15 to 16, 9 verses 21 to 22, Luke 1 verse 26. Context summary: Daniel 10 verses 10 to 14 explains why the angel appears 3 weeks after Daniel's initial vision, Daniel 10 verses 1 to 9. This angel, probably Gabriel, Daniel 8 verses 15 to 16, had been sent as soon as Daniel prayed. Yet he was delayed and relates the circumstances surrounding his flight. The passage also introduces another angel, Michael, and reveals that the first message concerned what would happen to the Israelites in the latter days. Verse 11. And he said to me, O Daniel, man greatly loved, understand the words that I speak to you, and stand upright, for now I have been sent to you. And when he had spoken this word to me, I stood up trembling. The angel who touched Daniel is most likely Gabriel. This being is often used as a messenger on God's behalf, Daniel 8 verses 15 to 16, 9 verses 21 to 22, Luke 1 verse 26. Some interpreters believe it was also Gabriel who appeared at first, Daniel 10 verses 5 to 6, and whose voice and appearance caused Daniel to faint, Daniel 10 verses 8 to 9. Others believe there are two separate entities here, the first being a pre-incarnate Jesus Christ, and the second, in this section, being Gabriel. Here, as before, Daniel 9 verse 23, Gabriel refers to Daniel as greatly loved. The experience might be overwhelming, but the intent was not to cause fear. Rather, the angel has come to give Daniel further understanding of his earlier vision, Daniel 10 verse 1. However, Daniel is still human, so despite being able to stand, he is still shaky and unsettled. Like Daniel, believers today are greatly loved by their heavenly Father, John 3 verse 16, 1 John 3 verse 1. He wants us to understand his word. However, God has not sent an angel such as Gabriel to believers. Instead, he has given us the Holy Spirit, John 14 verses 16 to 17, Romans 8 verses 14 to 16, 1 Corinthians 2 verses 10 to 16, Ephesians 1 verses 13 to 14, 17 to 18. Jesus promised, "The Helper, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, he will teach you all things and bring to your remembrance all that I have said to you." John 14 verse 26. Verse 12. Then he said to me, "Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart to understand and humbled yourself before your God, your words have been heard, and I have come because of your words." Numerous encounters with angels include the celestial beings telling humans not to be afraid, or people reacting with overt fear, Numbers 22:31, Daniel 8 verses 16 to 17, Luke 1 verses 13 and 30, 2 verses 9 to 10, Acts 10 verses 3 to 4. In their natural, spiritual state, these beings are intimidating and otherworldly. This angel is most likely Gabriel, Daniel 8 verses 15 to 16, 9 verses 21 to 22, Luke 1 verse 26, who has come with reassurance and instruction for Daniel. The angel commends Daniel for consistently and humbly seeking to understand God's messages. It had been 3 weeks between Daniel's initial vision, Daniel 10 verses 1 to 3, and this encounter, Daniel 10 verses 5 to 11, 13. Yet God had heard Daniel's prayers from the moment they were spoken. Although Daniel was a modest and devoted prophet of the Lord, the answer to his prayers did not arrive immediately. The following verses give the reason for the delay, Daniel 10 verses 13 to 14. Similarly, a believer today may wonder if their prayers are not being heard, because they do not see immediate answers. We should not be discouraged, however, nor should we stop praying. God hears the prayers of a humble believer, and he answers at the right time. Hebrews 4 verse 16 encourages believers to draw near to God's throne of grace to find mercy and grace in time of need. Jesus encouraged his disciples to pray. He said, "Ask, and it will be given to you, seek, and you will find, knock, and it will be opened to you." Matthew 7 verse 7. Verse 13. The prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days, but Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I was left there with the kings of Persia. This verse is a unique look behind the scenes into the spiritual realm. It comes across like an obscure reference spoken by an expert to a layman. Occasionally, a medical doctor, lawyer, technician, or mechanic will use working language around those who don't know that subject intimately. When that happens, a non-expert might understand a portion of what's said, the rest goes over their head. The statement made in this verse has the same flavor. The angel is speaking about something which mortals, such as Daniel, can only vaguely grasp. The basic message given is clear. What's obscure is the precise meaning of these phrases. The speaker, likely the angel Gabriel, Daniel 8 verses 15 to 16, 9 verses 21 to 22, Luke 1 verse 26, has come to Daniel 3 weeks after he saw another vision, Daniel 10 verses 1 to 6. Here, this being explains why he is arriving now. Daniel's prayers were heard as soon as he began praying, 21 days before the angel appeared, Daniel 10 verses 1 to 9. Yet the angelic response was delayed. The explanation given here is that the angel was obstructed somehow. Blame is assigned to the prince of the kingdom of Persia. This stalemate lasted until the angel Michael came to assist. Scholars have pored over the Hebrew words used here, attempting to make sense of each one. All agree on the most obvious aspects of the verse, as above. Questions about the exact identity of the prince of the kingdom of Persia, the kings of Persia, the precise implications of the term princes, what sort of battle was occurring, and so forth are subject to debate. Most such discussions delve into fine points of ancient Hebrew or related topics. The verse conveys enough for Daniel, and later readers, to grasp the basic idea, and the rest is ultimately unimportant. No explanation is given for why God allowed his messenger to be delayed. Michael and Gabriel are the only angels named in the Bible. Michael typically appears in a military context, Revelation 12 verse 7, Jude 1 verse 9. He is mentioned again in this same passage in connection to the nation of Israel, Daniel 10 verse 21. The prince of the kingdom of Persia is very likely a demon of some sort, whose interests were primarily over that nation. This would coordinate with the idea of a demonic hierarchy working to influence human affairs, Ephesians 6 verse 12, Matthew 4 verses 8 to 9, 1 John 5 verse 19. It's possible the term prince is used here of spiritual rank, and that it might apply to angels in the same sense as it does to demons. The following verses will give more information on this angel's mission and the content of his new information, Daniel 10 verse 14. Verse 14. And came to make you understand what is to happen to your people in the latter days. For the vision is for days yet to come. An angel, probably Gabriel, Daniel 8 verses 15 to 16, 9 verses 21 to 22, Luke 1 verse 26, appeared to Daniel, Daniel 10 verse 11, 3 weeks after a troubling vision, Daniel 10 verses 1 to 3, 12 to 13. The angel explains his delay was the result of a conflict, most likely, this was against another spiritual being, Daniel 10 verse 13. The purpose for the angel's visit is to make Daniel understand what would happen to the Jewish people, in the latter days, meaning the future, with a special emphasis on the very end of human history. The vision Daniel received concerned days yet to come. All of Daniel's prophetic visions include aspects of the end times, Daniel 2 verse 28, 7 verses 16 to 18, 8 verse 17, 9:23, 24. Prophecy is often given in poetic terms, yet God's predictions always come true. Before blessing his sons, Jacob intended to tell them about what was to come in Israel's future, Genesis 49 verse 1. He prophesied that his son, Dan, would be a serpent in the way, a viper by the path, that bites the horse's heels so that his rider falls backward, Genesis 49 verse 17. Centuries later, the tribe of Dan was the first to openly embrace idolatry, Judges 18. Commentators suggest the false prophet, Revelation 13 verses 11 to 12, in the end times may emerge from the tribe of Dan. It is noteworthy that the tribe of Dan is not mentioned among the 12 tribes that are sealed in the tribulation period, Revelation 7 verses 4 to 8. Verse 15. When he had spoken to me according to these words, I turned my face toward the ground and was mute. In the 3rd year of Cyrus' rule, Daniel experienced a vision, Daniel 10 verse 1. The images of conflict apparently sent Daniel into mourning, Daniel 10 verse 2. 3 weeks later, he was visited by one or more spiritual beings, Daniel 10 verses 4 to 6, 13, 16. Daniel may have seen the pre-incarnate Christ and then primarily interacted with an angel, likely Gabriel, Daniel 8 verses 15 to 16, 9 verses 21 to 22, Luke 1 verse 26. Here, he is communicating with the angel. The initial encounter overwhelmed Daniel, Daniel 10 verse 9, but he was soon refreshed, Daniel 10 verse 10. The angel then explained that he'd been delayed by an entity referred to as the Prince of the Kingdom of Persia, Daniel 10 verses 12 to 14. This revelation seems to shock Daniel once again. He takes a posture of astonishment, silent, with his head down. A being appearing like a man, possibly the same angel spoken of in verse 15, will further encourage him, and Daniel will explain how he has been staggered by his recent visions, Daniel 10 verses 16 to 17. Context summary Daniel 10:15, 11:1 records Daniel's response to the angel's report about demonic opposition. Daniel is still weak and speechless, but a human-like figure refreshes him. The angel says he will tell Daniel what is written in the book of truth. This leads to the prophecies contained in chapter 11. Verse 16. And behold, one in the likeness of the children of man touched my lips. Then I opened my mouth and spoke. I said to him who stood before me, O my Lord, by reason of the vision pains have come upon me, and I retain no strength. This moment occurs as Daniel converses with an angel, probably Gabriel, Daniel 8 verses 15 to 16, 9 verses 21 to 22, Luke 1 verse 26. The visit was inspired by Daniel's earlier vision, Daniel 10 verse 1. The shock of seeing a celestial being overwhelmed Daniel, Daniel 10 verses 9 to 10. Though the angel comforted him, Daniel was further awed, Daniel 10 verse 15, to hear that his visitor had spent 3 weeks in conflict with some other spiritual being, Daniel 10 verses 12 to 13. Here, Daniel receives further comfort and refreshment. His lips are touched, and he is once again able to speak. The being who touches Daniel is not clearly identified. The Hebrew phrasing being used suggests it might have been the same angel mentioned in both prior and following verses. And yet, it may have been an entirely different being. Daniel's description here simply means that this entity looked like a human being. This is not connected to his earlier prophecy about one like a son of man, Daniel 7 verse 13. Nor does the mention of my Lord imply anything in particular. The phrase is being used in respect, Daniel 12 verse 8. Daniel then explains that this series of experiences has left him weakened and in pain. Daniel had been in mourning for 3 weeks, possibly prompted by a vision of conflict he had seen, Daniel 10 verses 1 to 3. Then, he was staggered by the appearance of a celestial being, Daniel 10 verses 5 to 6, and yet again astonished by hearing about the spiritual conflict at work, Daniel 10 verse 13. This explanation, Daniel 10 verse 17, will lead to further reassurances, Daniel 10 verses 18 to 19. Verse 17. How can my Lord's servant talk with my Lord? For now no strength remains in me, and no breath is left in me. Those who encounter angels often react with intense fear, Numbers 22:31, Daniel 8 verses 16 to 17, Luke 1 verses 13 and 30, 2 verses 9 to 10, Acts 10 verses 3 to 4. This is to be expected. Angels are immensely powerful spiritual beings. Daniel is attempting to speak with such a creature, Daniel 10 verses 5 to 15, but is struggling not to be overwhelmed. The combination of a troubling vision, Daniel 10 verse 1, weeks of mourning, Daniel 10 verses 2 to 3, and the dramatic appearance have taken his breath away. Fortunately, this angel, probably Gabriel, Daniel 8 verses 15 to 16, 9 verses 21 to 22, Luke 1 verse 26, is here for Daniel's benefit. The angel will provide further strength, Daniel 10 verses 18 to 19, before delivering his message, Daniel 10 verses 20 to 21. Not all those visited by angels are so blessed. The Lord sent an angel to Jerusalem to destroy it because David had sinned by numbering the people of Israel, but he stopped the angel from destroying the city, 1 Chronicles 21 verse 15. In another incident, a single angel killed massive numbers of invading troops just outside of Jerusalem, 2 Kings 19 verses 35 to 36. Daniel's reference to my Lord is simply polite speech, as one would speak to a superior, Daniel 1 verse 10, 19. Daniel is not equating this person with the Lord God. Verse 18. Again one having the appearance of a man touched me and strengthened me. Daniel is once again touched and strengthened to counter the overwhelming effect of his visions, Daniel 10 verses 16 to 17. As before, the being who touches him is one who looks like a human being. Read in context, it seems likely this is the same being with whom Daniel has been speaking, an angel, Daniel 10 verses 10 to 15, probably Gabriel, Daniel 8 verses 15 to 16, 9 verses 21 to 22, Luke 1 verse 26. However, not all commentators agree on this point. It's entirely reasonable that more than one angel has come to deliver this message. The exact identity of each being is not crucial to the purpose of Daniel's writing. The first touch was meant to encourage Daniel, Daniel 10 verses 10 to 12. The second enabled him to speak, Daniel 10 verse 16. The third now provides strength. This is important, as Daniel is about to be given more information, and he will need his strength to endure what he is about to be told, Daniel 10 verses 19 to 21. Verse 19. And he said, O man greatly loved, fear not, peace be with you, be strong and of good courage. And as he spoke to me, I was strengthened and said, Let my Lord speak, for you have strengthened me. In an earlier encounter, an angelic messenger referred to Daniel as greatly loved, Daniel 9 verse 23. That assurance was repeated by Daniel's current visitor, Daniel 10 verse 11, and is echoed here as well. Daniel's experiences have been overwhelming, Daniel 10 verses 1 to 2, 9, 15. Yet they are not meant to cause him fear, or to make him despair. Instead, Daniel is being given the awesome responsibility of seeing and recording these experiences. Bolstered by the angel's help, Daniel wanted to hear the message. His desire to hear what the angel would say is reminiscent of the boy Samuel's words, Speak, for your servant hears, 1 Samuel 3 verse 10. Believers can be encouraged knowing the Lord greatly loves them. The Apostle John writes in 1 John 3 verse 1, See what kind of love the Father has given to us, that we should be called children of God, and so we are. The angel also wishes Daniel peace. Knowing that God is in control of every situation gives believers a peaceful mind and a peaceful heart, Philippians 4 verses 6 to 7, 1 Peter 5 verse 7. Just as the Lord had told Joshua to be strong and courageous, Joshua 1 verse 9, so the angel tells Daniel to be brave. Verse 20. Then he said, Do you know why I have come to you? But now I will return to fight against the prince of Persia, and when I go out, behold, the prince of Greece will come. Apparently reacting to his troubling vision, Daniel had been in mourning for 3 weeks, Daniel 10 verses 1 to 3. He was then visited by one or more celestial beings in response to his prayers, Daniel 10 verses 4 to 6, 12 to 13. The delay was attributed to a conflict with an entity referred to as the Prince of the Kingdom of Persia, Daniel 10 verses 13 to 14, that reference is echoed here. The flow of this section suggests that the human-like being, Daniel 10 verses 16 and 18, is the same as the impressive figure Daniel first saw, Daniel 10 verses 4 to 6. The angel, likely Gabriel, Daniel 8 verses 15 to 16, 9 verses 21 to 22, Luke 1 verse 26, plans to return to his battle against a spiritual enemy. First, the angel will explain Daniel's recent visions, Daniel 10 verse 21, 11:2. Part of the angel's comments mention what seem to be other spiritual beings. The Prince of Persia seems to be some type of demon working on the Persian kingdom. The Prince of Greece would presumably be a demon working on the Greek kingdom. Michael the Archangel, Jude 1 verse 9, is also labeled a prince in this section, Daniel 10 verse 21. It appears he has taken Gabriel's place in battle so Gabriel can bring this message to Daniel. The exact meaning of this statement is not clear, but the nations of Persia and Greece both factor heavily into the prophecies in chapter 11. Verse 21. But I will tell you what is inscribed in the book of truth, there is none who contends by my side against these except Michael, your prince. Daniel's earlier vision was troubling, Daniel 10 verse 1, and apparently caused him to mourn, Daniel 10 verses 2 to 3. Comfort came in the form of an angelic messenger, Daniel 10 verses 10 to 14, probably Gabriel. The response was delayed for 3 weeks because of an entity called the Prince of the Kingdom of Persia, Daniel 10 verses 13 to 14, 20. The angel is to explain the last vision in greater detail, Daniel 11 verse 2. Only when Michael, the Archangel, Jude 1 verse 9, Revelation 12 verse 7, came to help was this angel able to come and minister to Daniel. Michael seems to have special responsibilities regarding Israel, Daniel 12 verse 1. The angelic speaker promises that what he says comes from the book of truth. This is not necessarily a literal collection of pages. However, it does evoke the idea of God's ability to remember every detail and decision. For example, Jeremiah 30 verse 11 indicates that the Lord recalls and remembers all his acts of discipline towards Israel. Revelation 5 verses 1 to 5 mentions a 7-sealed scroll which only Jesus can open, this contains a series of judgments. Other symbolic books contains records of individual struggles, Psalm 56 verse 8, and beginnings, Psalm 139 verse 16. God's words are always truth, 2 Samuel 7 verse 28, Numbers 23:19. Because of this supernatural encounter, Daniel would learn at least some of what the Lord God has in store for the nation of Israel. That description begins in chapter 11, after a comment, Daniel 11 verse 1, that seems to fit better with the end of this chapter. End of Daniel chapter 10. Please note: the material used in this video is from BibleRef.com, which is from Got Questions Ministries and is posted here to be read by immersive reader in the Edge browser. If you copy this material, please follow these rules. Content from BibleRef.com may not be used for any commercial purposes, or as part of any commercial work, without explicit prior written consent from Got Questions Ministries. Any use of our material should be properly credited. Please make it clear the content is from BibleRef.com. BibleRef.com content may not be altered, modified, or otherwise changed unless such changes are specifically noted.